Nothing says personal finance like a Yeti with a gun. We're gonna explode your finances. All right, bad joke. Let's talk about money. Does that bring up feelings of empowerment? Or are you like me in my 20s where it sounds like a foreign language? You turn on the TV, there's charismatic people screaming their advice at you, buy, ringing the gong, 50 charts ticking along the bottom. Well, in this video, I wanted to give you a 7-step guide to personal finances. Hopefully it'll set you on the path to financial freedom. I wanna give you just real practical, down-to-earth advice that I wish I had 10 years ago. Disclaimer, this is not official financial advice, nor do I believe you should be getting official financial advice off YouTube. Always check with a professional, and most importantly, do your own research. You might be thinking, isn't this kind of off-brand? Like, don't you normally talk about different subjects? Where does this fit in? And I actually thought that too, until I revisited Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a pyramid, which I'll put up here. I would like to address the irony of talking about a pyramid in a money video. Maslow's hierarchy of needs has 5 sections. At the very bottom, there's physiological needs: food, water, air, shelter. But then right above it, you get to the needs of safety, before love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization at the highest level. So the goal is to work your way up, check off all these boxes, and once you get to the top, that's where you can start worrying about where you fit in and what your highest purpose and highest calling is. Where money falls in this is the safety needs. Getting the basics of finances checks off the safety need, because if you don't have this, it doesn't matter how high you try to climb towards that self-actualization if this thing is always trying to pull you down. This video has 3 sections and 7 major points. Here we go. Step number 1. If you're in debt, get out now. And I'm right there with you. There were times in my 20s where I was like, oh, should I open my bank account? Should I see? I don't know if I like what I see in there. Getting out of debt is the first priority with everything, specifically credit debt. And the reason for this is because if you look at the annual percentage rate of interest for most credit cards, it comes out to about 20.93%. Let's call it 21%. Essentially, if you have $100 of debt, it just compounds. The next year you have $121. The next year you have 21% of that. The longer you wait to pay it off, the more that just compounds and stacks up. Well, Clark, what about student loans? What about investing in yourself and like good debt? There are exceptions to this, but as a general rule, this is the first place you would start. There's 2 sort of frameworks you can take with getting out of debt. The first is a snowball, a debt snowball. This is like what Dave Ramsey talks about, where you pay off the lowest balance debt first. So if you have 5 credit cards and one is $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever it is, you would start with the $1,000 credit card because that's easiest and that's right in front of you, and that's going to build your positive momentum. Then you tackle the 5, 10, 20. The second is the avalanche method, where you just look at your debt and you're like, dude, I am paying the biggest one because that's racking up the most interest. Try your best to never float credit card balances. That'll just stack up. And really, I've seen people, in our friend groups, in our life, just that is the thing that comes back to bite them, and 5, 10 years down the road, they're still paying it off. Step number 2, the fact that it's not about the money you make, it's about the money you keep. The person who makes $1 million a year and they spend $1,010,000 a year is in the hole $10,000. But the person who makes $50,000 a year and is able to save 5, they're $15,000 ahead of that first person, even though on paper it's like, oh, that lifestyle is way better. It's not about the money you make, it's about the money you keep. And I've seen people, entrepreneurs, and I've fallen victim to this as well, just full transparency, where you make $100,000, $200,000 a year plus, and they're still paycheck to paycheck. They're still buying things and they're not saving any. So this practical tip for step number 2, get a budget. Track your spending. Track your cash flow in with cash flow out. Have some way to do this. I don't care if it's spreadsheets, those work fine. If it's paper even, you just look at your account summaries at the end of every month, that's fine too. What I like doing, and personally what I use, is an app called Mint. It's by the same people that do TurboTax. So you link all your bank accounts to it and it'll tell you every day in real time, you refresh it, how much you spent, how much you've brought in, and where your net worth is. And this is not sponsored by them, but that's a free app that I've used and still use every single day. Even the habit alone of you checking that every day, you find that what gets measured gets managed. And what you'll find is that you probably have 2 or 3 categories that are spending a lot of the money, and you can start having awareness around them, because awareness to fix anything, whether it's emotional, personal, relationship-wise, is always the first step. So if you follow these steps, step 1, get out of debt. Step 2, start tracking things. Get a simple budget in. Remember, it's not about the money you make, it's about the money you keep. You're ready for step number 3. This is to build a war chest. Commonly referred to as an emergency fund, but I like the term war chest. It's cooler, makes you sound like a Viking. And this isn't one to just skip over and be like, I'm just gonna go straight to investing now that I'm out of debt. This is really important. It's estimated that over 40% of Americans can't come up with a $400 or more expense if an emergency happened. That means medical debt, car accident, pipe burst, home repair, relocation. $400 or less is maybe what 40% can do. The common advice with this is about 3 to 6 months of your essential needs income. So if you stripped everything down to just bare bones what you need to live so you're not on the streets, that number times about 3 to 6 will get you what you need in this war chest. Psychologically, this is really good because it builds that positive momentum. When you check your bank account, you're like, oh, yes, I got that war chest right there. But also, you can think of finances like a game of chutes and ladders. You know that game, or you ever play it as a kid? You know, you get a ladder and it'd shoot you up. If you rolled the wrong number and got a chute, boo, all the way back to where you were. So you get out of debt, climbing ladders, and then God forbid something bad happens, you don't want it to be a chute that takes you all the way back in debt. Step number 1. Once you got the basics down, you're ready for step number 4. And really this could go at step 1, but this is to increase your income. Very high leverage, and you'd be surprised at how few people think about going here first. There's a great book by Ramit Sethi, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Recommend it for everyone. A great follow-up to this, like very practical, do this, not that. In there, he gives a great point that there is a cap to how much you can cut. If you're going after this frugal living, well, there's only so much you can save and cut from your lifestyle. And not only it's just not that fun to live frugally 24/7, 365, but there's no cap to how much you can earn. And he calls this big wins. Things like increasing your salary, asking for a raise and renegotiating every 6 to 12 months. Most people don't even do that. If you can get a $6,000, $10,000 raise, that is a big win. Maybe you're dissatisfied with your job. Can you, for 1 year, be hell-bent on getting out of it into a higher paying one? Maybe you feel like you don't have any skills. Well, can you look at some trades and invest in going to a trade school so that you come out and in 2 years you can be making pretty good money with in-need jobs? This is where side hustles come in to try and increase your income. And once you're here, you're ready for the 5th step, automate it. Automate your savings as much as you can, as much as possible. Try to find a way to save money every single month without even thinking about it. When I was first starting out as an entrepreneur, I didn't realize how you have to pay taxes. I'm like, oh, that's important. And then every year I would panic because, I'd owe, some years it was like $5,000, $10,000, $14,000, $20,000. And I'm like, I don't have that. I made that, but I don't have that. And it wasn't until I found an app that every single paycheck, it would just take a certain percentage away and put it in a separate savings account that I really didn't look at and didn't touch. That was a game changer because it was automated. It didn't require willpower. Automated also is for payments. So every single bill you have, link it to your bank account, direct withdrawal. So you don't have to think about it. They don't pile up. You don't go back into debt like chutes and ladders. I've shared this before, but it fits in the context of this video very well. When I was 22 years old, thinking about personal finance, I just did a informal exercise where I wrote out every single job I had. I was like, okay, I was a golf caddy, almost got fired from that one, was doing odd jobs working on boats, got fiberglass in my lungs. I had almost 22 jobs by the age of 22, but I didn't save a single dollar from it. I was still paycheck to paycheck. I was still spending every single thing. That was a tough pill to swallow that, whoa, I have worked since I was 11 years old, and I don't have a single dollar to show from it. So that's when it hit me that, again, not about the money you make, it's about the money you keep, and a part of everything you make is yours. So put a certain amount aside for yourself every single paycheck. You will be so glad you did, even if it's only $100, okay? Even if it's as big as $1,000, it is gonna help you so much in the long term. Which brings us to, okay, where do I start investing this money? My new NFT project, Excited Apes. I guess Yeti Apes. This is the first one, actually. I'm plugging it. And again, do your own research. This is more conservative advice. Step number 6, if your employer has a 401k match system, and most do, up to like 3 to 6% of you put in, it is literally free money. Max it out. As much as you can put into that 401k, max it out. You're not gonna get 100% return matching anywhere else in any investment. The second thing you can do is open a Roth IRA. Without getting too technical here, keeping this very high level, you can take this and, Google it, find some more research on this if it interests you. Roth IRAs are great because every single dollar you put in, since you've already been taxed on it, right? Like you get paid and then you pay taxes and what's left over is yours. Every single dollar you put in, when it comes out, say when you're 70 years old, 60 years old, or anything like that, they don't tax you again. Versus if you just open an account with like Vanguard or Schwab and you start trading index funds or anything like that, when you take it out, you'll have to pay capital gains tax. Typically around 15 to 20%, depending on your income and marital status, which makes a big difference if you're keeping it in there and it's compounding for the long term. So your 401k and your Roth IRA, those are the first two things you look at when you start thinking about saving, and a part of everything you make is yours to keep. Those are the two right there. I believe $6,000 is the max amount you can contribute every single year. They change it and adjust it with inflation. That was the number from 2021. And it's only if you make less than 125,000 is the number I have down here, being single. A simple Google search, you can find what it is now, but maxing out the Roth IRA is like the first step, and the 401k. So now the big question in step 7, investing. What do you do with it? Because if it's in the 401k and the Roth, it doesn't just automatically invest. Chances are you have to decide what you're gonna do with it. Now this is where all the financial advice that you see on TV, you see in YouTube videos, buy this, sell this, this is where they're talking from. This is like, once you do steps 1 through 6, now you're ready for this. This could be its own training, and probably one that's a little beyond my scope that I want to give here for the basics. In general, there's sort of a couple buckets. There's like the real estate camp, that you put your money in real estate, whether it's buying properties, fixing them up, renting them out. There's that camp. But then there's also the stock market camp. Let's talk about this because I like this. This is what I did, and this was the route I chose. I don't know much about this, just full transparency, so that's beyond my scope of expertise. And I consciously didn't learn a lot about this because I wanted to be all in here. Stocks are passive. You get to buy a part of a company that's essentially running in the background doing the work for you. I liked not having a lot of work behind it. I thought it was easier. It was simpler. In general, with stocks, this would split into two camps. There's things called index funds and there's individual stocks. And so a better solution than like the high risk individual stocks where you could gain it all, but you could also lose it all. These are what are called index funds, okay? And this is where it's a conglomerate of like 500 or 100 of those individual stocks packaged together. And so it diversifies your investment. Warren Buffett, one of the richest investors and arguably best investors of all time, said that if he were to die, he would leave like 90% of his wealth in index funds to his kids. He also said that 99% of people should go with low-cost index funds. So unless you really have a passion for following that specific company, you really know what you're doing, most of us, it is much better to go with low-cost index funds. And there's a couple that you can look into. Vanguard has a variety of them that are very popular and kind of considered the gold standard. Personally, for me, I go with Charles Schwab, a brokerage. Again, without getting too technical, do your research and you can find one that you vibe with. Now that you're at step 7, okay, like pat yourself on the back because you just did more than 90% of people do. And I will say here, it's very boring, but be okay with being boring. Probably the best financial advice you can receive is ignore the hype. There were 2 times in my recent career where I was tempted to buy into the hype, and I'm so glad I did not. One of them, it was actually some entrepreneurs I knew. Some of them were making, just millions of dollars, and they were putting it all of it into a platform called Celsius. Oh, Clark, you got to do this because it gets you 20%. And my red flags went off. I'm like, there's no way that can get you 20%. But I set up an account and I was about to put a little bit in there. Boom, they got shut down. All the assets got frozen. My buddy couldn't even get his money out. It was like this nightmare. The truism, if it sounds too good to be true, probably is. The second was NFTs. I'm not gonna lie, if I said I was never tempted to buy into some of the hype. And I'm not judging people who went into those because I get it. I understand it. It's fun. It's new. High risk, high reward. But in that case, I guess time will tell, but it's pretty clear that it's just kind of all high risk. High risk, no reward in some cases. So my point is just be safe, be boring. It's okay to be boring. It's okay to be conservative with money. In fact, I think you're supposed to. You hear people about starting a business or a side hustle and it explodes and they become a millionaire in 12 to 18 months. And there was some advice I heard where people are saying, don't even worry about index funds and safe investments because if you're gonna be a millionaire, just go all in on this thing. And so that's the difference. It's get rich quick, get rich slow. The thing is, you can do both. Yeah, you can take all these conservative investing and personal finance steps, but you can also try and start a business. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm willing to bet that if you're doing it the slow way and the fast way together, sort of like I did, really what you're seeing here, then isn't that more guaranteed than just going in on one and ignoring the other? So again, even ignoring the hype in that industry of everyone needs to start a business. Well, that's not true. You can do very well for yourself working in a normal job, like a 9-to-5, if you're smart, if you're disciplined, if you let it compound for the long term. And don't let anyone say that you're less than or you're failing if you're working a 9-to-5. I hate that narrative that the people look down on 9-to-5s. They have so many pros to them. They're not gonna pop up on your YouTube feed likely, but I'm willing to bet that more millionaires have been made the slow way that we described than just the fast way, because there's also a lot of losers in that fast way. 2 more things. If you like this video and you take any of this advice and do your own research and use it, come back to it. If you're like, dude, my finances are in a different spot, or I learned about 401ks, or I got out of debt, or I started building my war chest, or anything we spoke about in this video, drop a comment down below because I would love that. If we just have a ton of comments with people saying dude, this was the thing that got me thinking a little differently, and here I am in a totally different spot. 2 books I'll recommend as perfect next steps for you on this. The first, The Psychology of Money, very fun read about some of the psychology behind money and high level concepts of viewpoints of money and wealth. And the second is Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I think he does it very well, putting it in real, practical, fun, easy to digest terms. That's it. I hope you learned at least one thing. I hope this helps demystify the world of personal finance a little bit for you. And more importantly, I hope that it benefits you. Thank you so much for being here. See you in the next one. Stop settling, start living. See ya.